So I would say there's a reason that homesteaders like cooking with cast iron. I know that when I discovered cast iron, I've never been the same and have been using it ever since. Not only are they healthier than the other non-stick options, you can cook over an open flame and they will literally stand the test of time. So today I'm going to walk you through how I restore a neglected cast iron pan to its former glory, why you'll love cooking with cast iron, and some cast iron cooking tips if you're a brand new beginner. If this is your first time here, my name is Brianna and my husband Gray and I like to learn, practice, and teach our children traditional skills. So my first introduction to cast iron was actually when I was in the market for a new pancake griddle. Generally speaking, when you buy the electric pancake or waffle makers, they're made with that non-stick coating. And Gray and I have always tried to stay away from the non-stick or Teflon options. In fact, we registered for a set of stainless steel pans because of this back when we got married in 2011 that we're still using to this day. We did have an electric pancake griddle that I never felt great about using because I knew the dangers of these non-stick coatings. Well, as I was searching online, I found the Lodge cast iron pancake griddle, and it was a low rim, so it didn't have high sides, and I thought, oh, it's kind of a risk getting this. I don't know how to cook on cast iron. I've heard some myths about how you wash them is difficult and that they stick, and so I wasn't entirely sure that I wanted to make the purchase, but we took a chance. We ordered the Lodge cast iron pancake griddle, and I felt comfortable doing so because it came pre-seasoned, and ever since we have been hooked. I was totally wrong about all of those preconceived notions of how difficult it was going to be cooking on cast iron. I don't know why I thought those things, but they were totally wrong. And so I gained confidence as I made pancakes for our family every morning. Well, since then, because my friends and family know that I'm a cast iron enthusiast, I have been given some really lovely pieces, and some of them had been in storage for a really long time. So they accumulated rust and dust, were not in good condition, and needed to be reseasoned. And so this is when I started my journey in learning how to restore these beautiful cast iron pans, and that is what I want to share with you today. So let me tell you how I restore a cast iron pan. Here's what you're going to need: a rusty cast iron skillet, of course, some steel wool or a sponge or a brush, something that is quite abrasive, some dish soap, a towel that can dry really well, some vegetable oil, and of course an oven. All you need to do to begin is to rinse the cast iron skillet to get any dust or debris off of it if it's really in bad condition. Rinse the skillet with warm water and use a scrub brush or abrasive sponge to just remove any loose rust or dirt on the pan. Then fill the sink with warm water and add a few drops of dish soap. Submerge the skillet into the water and use steel wool or a sponge to scrub away the rust. Rinse it thoroughly and dry it with a towel. Now you may notice at this time that there's still some spots of rust, but I find that drying it really reveals where the problem areas are on the pan. So I like to do a once over and scrub it really well and then get it totally dry, and the rust spots will really be revealed. So then you need to go in for round two. So if the rust is really bad, you can use some steel wool or, like I said, something really abrasive and just target those areas that have extremely deep rust. You might even consider using a little bit of white vinegar and letting it sit on those rust spots for about an hour. Then repeat the process and rinse the pan, dry the pan, and review it once more. If it looks totally free of rust and just a matte black all over, then you're good to go. If you still see some rust, then you're gonna have to go in for round three. Sometimes these things take round four to just keep scrubbing. Now, this does take some elbow grease, but this really is the hardest part of the process, I promise. Once the rust is all gone, the rest of this is quite easy. So once your pan is totally clear of rust, it's time to start the seasoning process. Start by preheating your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure the pan is completely dry before adding the oil. So to do this, I first towel dry it, and then I actually put it on my stovetop on medium low just to heat the pan and make sure there's no more moisture in the pan. Once the pan is cool enough to touch, you can put some vegetable oil on an old rag or a paper towel and generously coat the entire pan with the vegetable oil. And you want to do this inside and outside. Once the pan is totally oiled, you can get a cookie sheet or something to catch if there's any drips in the bottom of your oven, and put the pan upside down on a sturdy cookie sheet and place it in the oven. All there is left to do in the seasoning process is to bake the pan for 1 hour and then turn your oven off. Leave the pan in the oven until the oven and the pan is completely cool. Now, after it's cool, your cast iron pan is ready to be used. It should have a non-stick surface, and I will note that it will become more and more non-stick the more that you use it. So you may have a little sticking if you don't oil it enough as you're cooking off the bat after it's been seasoned for the first time. But once you cook with it every single day, you are not going to have any problems with sticking, I promise. So in there you have it. You have a beautiful, almost like new seasoned cast iron pan ready to serve you for years to come. Now I'd like to move on to the 5 reasons to why I think that once you learn how to cook with cast iron and you put it into practice, why you're going to love it. Number 1 is that I think that cast iron cookware makes food taste better. If you're frying chicken or if you're roasting veggies, it makes the food crispier and more flavorful. And so that I had to put as point number 1. It just makes your food taste better. Point number 2 is that cast iron cooking is incredibly easy once you get in the swing of it. Now, I do have some points at the end of this video that if you're brand new at cooking with cast iron that I think will really help you, because there is a learning curve, but once you get on the curve, then cooking with cast iron is way easier a lot of times than using other types of pans. Point number 3, and this was a big one and what actually led me to cast iron to begin with, is that cast iron is naturally non-stick. And so you can't beat that. Iron is natural, it's not going to hurt you, and is a natural non-stick surface. And so keep in mind, they will become more non-stick the more you use them. Point number 4 into why you're gonna love your new restored cast iron pan is that it's really sturdy. Cast iron pans will stand the test of time. You can even pass these down generationally. I have some of my grandma's cast iron pans. And finally, and this I think appeals to a lot of the homesteaders out there, is point number 5, that cast iron can be used anywhere. It can be used over an open flame. It can be used on a barbecue, on a stovetop, of course. We've even used ours in our pizza oven. So in the case of a power outage, you can cook with these pans and these Dutch ovens outside over a fire. I think that cooking with cast iron is a great skill to have if you're a homesteader, even if you don't use them every day, because if there's a power outage and for whatever reason you're out cooking over an open flame, you know how to use these pans because they are a little bit different than using your standard cookware. Now on to the tips. Now this is very important if you're not used to cooking with cast iron pans, or you've tried it in the past and you had some problems. I know that the very first time I tried it, and not only was it extremely heavy, but what I was cooking did not work out. And so if you've ever had problems with cast iron, it could be that you didn't implement one of these tips. Tip number 1 is to always use a seasoned pan. Now that is what I just taught you how to do. If you have an unseasoned pan or you're restoring an old rusty pan, use a seasoned pan. You know if it's seasoned because you can visibly see that it's shiny and glossy. Even if you've had a pan for a while and you haven't used it for a while especially, it may require re-seasoning, but now that you know these steps, you can just ignore the rust part of the process and just skip right ahead to re-seasoning a pan if you haven't used it in a while. Tip number 2 is to always preheat your skillet. Cast iron pans do not do well if they're cold and you put food in them before you turn on the heat. So you want to get these pans heating up way before you add your food. Preheating your pan is the #1 factor in making your food not stick to it. This is what makes it non-stick, is the combination of the oil with it being preheated. So preheat it. They take a little bit of time because they're so heavy to heat through. And also don't forget an oven mitt because most of these pans are hot on the handle. And the last tip is to always use oil every time you cook. Coconut oil, lard, bacon grease, butter all work great as cooking oils when you're cooking. Now, I don't generally cook with vegetable oil, even though that's what I use to season a pan, I don't cook with that. But I do like to use coconut oil and butter and things like that. But anytime you get ready to cook, you want to heat the pan, add the oil, and then go ahead and add your food. So I hope that this video was helpful to you in some way. If you have any tips that I left out or reasons that you love cooking with cast iron, please leave them in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time.